and welcome. My name is Caitlin Coombs with energeticcity.ca, and in this series, I'm speaking with each of the candidates for the Prince George, Peace River, and Northern Rockies Member of Parliament seat in the 2025 Canadian federal election. And we are asking questions posed by our readers. So today I'm joined by David Watson of the People's Party of Canada. So David, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Well, better. I was quite sick last week, but I'm pretty much gone now from that. Just a little bit in voice still, but otherwise good.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're feeling better. So starting off, what are your thoughts on Northern Health, and what is your party's plan on addressing healthcare funding, specifically with the nursing shortage?
Okay, well, first of all, healthcare funding is a provincial matter. Okay, so we have very little to say for that as a federal, especially an MP, a single MP. But from the federal side, what the government basically is meant for is basically health transfer. We transfer money over to the provincial government. The provincial government determines what's going to go there. We would like to see changes to the Health Act, drastic changes actually. We would like to actually scrap the entire Health Act as it sits right now and make it into a different act. That way the provinces have more control over what they're doing and how they do it. And the funding will come only from the provinces. We don't provide it to them. In order to provide that funding, so that they would have it, we would make room within the tax system by lowering taxes and doing things like getting rid of the GST and stuff like that in order that they could take care of that sort of stuff.
Okay. And what is your opinion on LNG in the region and expanding our markets to Asia, for example?
I think it's great. I mean, you can't think anything better than that. I mean, that's the way it should be. We should have been doing that for years. It should never have stopped. I mean, when we started out with our energy sector, it was going that way, and then it changed in the 80s, and then it got better slowly again, and then it got worse again, and it got slower again. And the government has used this for years and years as a tool to try and restrict certain abilities of the individual provinces so that they fall in line. Basically, it's always been a West has to pay for the East. And that's what it is. It has been and it is. You see that in equalization payments. You see it in all sorts of things. The West is funding in the East in everything. They have all the MPs, they have all the senators, they have most of the judges, they have almost everything, and yet we're the ones who have to fund for it all.
Okay. That's a good way to look at it.
If the more we can do in the energy sector, as long as it is safe, and as long as it is reasonably easy to get to in case of an accident, there should be no reason why we shouldn't be able to do just about anything.
All right. And what, kind of on the same line, what is your response to tariffs and the future of our trade relations with the U.S.?
Well, we should never have tariffs against the U.S. at all. Tariffs against the U.S. are taxes on ourselves. That's all they are, plain and simple. So I don't know why any government would ever choose to put taxes on their own people unless they just want to make them pay and make them want to hurt more, which is all that the Liberals have done when they've done this. So it's not a fair thing to do at all. So tariffs from our side, on our own side, we call them reciprocal taxes usually. Completely wrong. When you're looking at tariffs from the American side, well, that's a different story. And, we have no control over what they do. But just like our reciprocal taxes are what we are paying the tax for, when they are charging us a tariff, it's not us paying that tax. It's them. It does affect how much business we might do, but it's not affecting us other than that. They pay the taxes on their side. So if they want to have a higher tax, well, then I say, let them have a higher tax. In fact, I know that's exactly what they're trying to get to. They're trying to get to a zero tax situation They don't want to have their people in the U.S. pay taxes. Before the Income Tax Act in the U.S. was brought in, they didn't have taxes. Not at all. Their whole system was funded by tariffs. I don't know if you knew that, but you can go and you can look it up, and it's true. And that goes way back to 1909. And then when they brought in the Fed in the U.S., which is their we call it Bank of Canada, which really isn't the Bank of Canada anyways, but when they brought in their Fed in 1913, 1914, you have a situation where they wanted control of money, and they wanted control of flow of money, and they wanted control of usury, which is debt and interest. Our whole process, most of the problems that we see today, they go back, you can say easily 100 years. And I have traced them easily lots of times back right to when I was a teenager in the early 70s.
All right. And sticking with the line of taxes, what's your opinion on the carbon tax?
I don't really want to say it,
Oh,
but
that's okay.
it's not good. It's not a good thing. It never was a good thing. It's a fake tax. It's just a tax to take more money in another way. It's an additional value added tax on people of Canada. We already had one. Actually, we have two of them in BC. We have a PST and there's the GST. And then there was the carbon tax as well. So we had three value added taxes. That's why everything seems to go up so fast in price, because you have it magnified. Every time it goes through another hand, it's magnified again and again and again. And it was wrong from the beginning. It shouldn't have gotten started. I don't know. We have I don't know what exactly the right word to use. I call them an abusive provincial government here in this province, because they enjoy taxing people, it seems. I don't say that in a literal manner, but that is definitely the feeling I get when I read all the news that comes out of Victoria about the taxes and the bills that they're doing. I just say carbon tax is wrong and should never have happened. Should never happen anywhere in Canada.
All right. And what is your idea of the future of energy specifically for this riding, our region?
I have big hopes for it. I think things are going to go really well, especially since with advancements in technology, we're getting farther and farther ahead, and we're going to be able to do things a lot faster, and we're going to be able to do things a lot cleaner, and we're going to be able to get a lot farther ahead. So I think I have nothing but good thoughts about it.
All right, wonderful. And how will you make housing more affordable for seniors?
Okay, well, this is another thing that you're impinging on provincial
Yeah.
legislation and provincial say so here. The only thing that the Canadian government can do as a federal at the federal level is basically provide money to the provincial governments. And we want to get out of that business. We don't want to be a funder for every little thing. We want the provinces to take care of their responsibilities themselves. What we're willing to do is we're willing to vacate certain areas or certain amounts of our area in order that they can take that funding and use it themselves from within their own province. And every province will obviously need different amounts, and they'll use it in different ways. But it's up to them to use it then. We take a look at from a party perspective. We wanted to look at maybe making things a little bit nicer or a little bit easier in certain areas. For instance, reducing administrative overhead on something, getting houses passed with less paperwork, so on. So if we can sweeten the pot just a little bit, well, that's where we can help. But if we just vacate the area, let them deal with it, and say, okay, well, if you can do this, we're willing to help you out by providing this.
All right. We had a mix of very local to provincial to a bit
That's
more of the
okay.
federal questions. So this one kind of falls in a bit of both. What's your opinion on the Firearms Act?
It's not very good. Most of the legislation, unfortunately, that has been enacted by uh, the governments since about the mid 50s is poor, and um, poor is just being nice. You could really cut it down, and you can really call it names, but it doesn't get you anywhere to do that. But it most of it is poor, and the firearms legislation is just that. It's over expensive. It's very difficult to track. It requires enormous amounts of funding on an annual basis, and that funding increases every so many years because you have more people getting in, and then they have to then pay for all their forms, and they have to do this, and they have to do this, and it creates massive amounts of administration, massive amounts of costs, massive amounts of tracking, massive amounts of everything. We want to get rid of all of that.
Mhm.
If we get rid of the entire Firearms Act as it is, and bring in a whole new one that basically just zooms in or prioritizes legal gun ownership, period. You are approved for it one time, and you're approved for life. After that point in time, the only thing that's going to come up to change that is if you commit a crime, especially a crime using a gun, then you would lose your rights. But otherwise, you're never going to lose your rights. You just get them one time and they're done. And the way to get them would be very similar to the way to get them right now. You take a firearms acquisition course, you learn about proper gun safety and so on, and then you pay for your initial fee, and then that's it. You're done. Holy, you get your card in the mail, and that card's good for life. If it breaks, well, then maybe you might have to buy a new one or something, but that's about it.
All right. Very simple. And the last one is probably the more personal one here, but why should people vote for you specifically?
Because I'm not making any empty promises, and I'm not saying anybody else is making promises, but I haven't. I've already been the um, candidate for the PPC in this area since October of 23, and in that time, I've talked to a lot of people. My voice tells you that a little bit, but it doesn't tell you how many. And I've talked to a lot of people, and over and over, people kind of say the same kind of thing, well, how come you, why you, or why are you doing this? Or, it's always the similar types of questions. And it's because I'm not trying to make any empty promises. I'm trying to make things that are common sense ideas sound exactly what they are, common sense, to people like yourself and people like everyone else that I saw over the last few days here.
Mhm.
And when people hear me, they say, yeah, you sound right. So, I mean, that's why they should vote for me, is because I'm the one who actually does sound right. I'm not trying to make a promise. I'm not trying to act like I know it all. There's always things to know. There's always things to learn. But I'm willing to know or learn as much as I can about the things that I might be responsible for. But beyond that, the only promise that I make to everyone is that if someone calls me and asks me a question, I'm not going to ignore them. I'm going to respond to them. If someone calls me and says they don't like how something happened or why something happened, I'll try and explain to them why it happened. And I mean, it's not going to satisfy everyone, but at least if people get an answer, they have something that they can walk away with and say, okay, well, he talked to me and I understood. Then that's what it comes down to for me, anyways. I myself have had many occasions over the years where I have tried to get in touch with elected officials, and I have very rarely been successful, very rarely. And actually, I ask, it's one of the questions I ask quite often when I'm going around talking to people is, how often have you had a politician call on you without you even calling them? And it's almost never. And the other question I like to ask is how many times have you called a politician, any politician, from any party? And some people say lots of times, and say, well, and what have been your responses? Well, a lot of the responses I get is I don't get a response.
Mhm.
My name gets taken, and I expect a response back, and I never hear anything back. So I don't like to comment on who these potential people were or anything. Not the ones who would give me that answer, but the people who were supposed to be responding. But um, it's not a good situation. People who feel like this, who feel slighted, those are the people that I'm trying to say, I'll be there for you.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you very much for taking the time to answer those
Oh,
questions.
appreciate it. They were good questions, actually. I expected a few different ones, tougher ones, but that's okay.
Well, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem at all.